Now that fans have had their opportunity to go hands-on with Battlefield 6 with its open beta, fans are wondering, is Battlefield truly back, or is Battlefield 6 just a reskin of Battlefield 2042? So after having our first full weekend with the Battlefield 6 open beta, I've seen a lot of people online complaining that Battlefield 6 is just a reskin of Battlefield 2042. It's no different, nothing's changed, so I thought it'd be fun to kind of put this to the test and show Battlefield 2042 side by side with Battlefield 6's beta to see what exactly has changed when it comes to attention to detail, and I hope you guys enjoy this video as much as I've enjoyed making it for you guys, and, well, I guess let's dive in. So kicking this off with a comparison of some of the destruction between the two games, and in Battlefield 2042, whenever I throw the C4 in a building and detonate it, the destruction itself does look pretty impressive, and what I don't want to see in a Battlefield game when it comes to destruction is just clean-cut, square cutouts of destruction when it comes to buildings, and for the most part in 2042, that's not what you see, which is a good thing. It helps the destruction look a bit more random and chaotic. While in Battlefield 6, there is a significant step up when it comes to the particle effects of the destruction. It looks really impressive, but if you're wanting to bring down buildings like you could in Bad Company 2, that's just not what you're going to be seeing in Battlefield 6. But when it does come to the destruction, you will find things across both 2042 and Battlefield 6 that you feel like you should be able to destroy, but you simply can't. For example, you might find a building that's completely immune to your RPG rounds, which is kind of weird, or another building where the lower floors can be destroyed, but the upper floors are completely invulnerable to your damage, or even just inconsistent destruction results where you might shoot an RPG round at a building and it just simply hurts the door a little bit, while the second round completely blows the face off the building. But I will say when it comes to the destruction that when you do find a building that you can destroy across either game, which sometimes can be a bit tedious, the destruction itself feels pretty similar, though Battlefield 6 has a bunch of added particle effects that make the destruction look a bit better in Battlefield 6 over what we saw in 2042, but I will say it's not a complete evolution of the destruction system.
Sector Charlie is fallen.
But one thing I really appreciate returning in Battlefield 6 is that actually whenever your character goes prone and you backpedal, you can actually see your character's body in the game, which is pretty cool. It makes your character feel a bit more grounded in the reality of the game, and it actually heightens the intensity, in my opinion, whenever you're backpedaling in these crazy combat scenarios, and it's pretty cool. It was something that we saw in Battlefield 5, but was removed in Battlefield 2042, and I'm happy to see it return in Battlefield 6. But when it comes to the multiplayer of Battlefield 6, the greatest thing they brought back is the actual class system of previous Battlefield games. The assault class is pushing the battle forward from the front lines. Engineers are running around the battlefield repairing vehicles. It's a beautiful thing to see, and it always blows my mind when I remember that 2042 didn't have these classes in its multiplayer. Instead, they had a hero system where you had special abilities, but it's nice to see that Battlefield's multiplayer is actually going to feel like Battlefield's multiplayer with the returning of these classic classes. And speaking of the gameplay, one of the new features in Battlefield 6 that they're actually borrowing from the newer Call of Duty games is the ability to wall mount and peek around corners. And though some people may think this encourages camping, I personally think this mechanic makes more sense in Battlefield than it does in Call of Duty, and it's something we didn't see in Battlefield 2042, and I'm happy to see it in Battlefield 6. But when it comes to advanced movement between 2042 and Battlefield 6, I am happy to report that Battlefield 6 added the ability for you to dive to the ground, which I always love in every first-person shooter. I much prefer, diving and hitting the dirt to get into cover as opposed to sliding. And though 2042 did have the knee slide in that game, I do much prefer having the dive mechanic that we see in Battlefield 6. And speaking of advanced movement, in Battlefield 6, when it comes to sprinting, you only really have your primary sprint, whereas in 2042, you could actually double time, sling your weapon over your shoulder to run faster, and that has been removed in Battlefield 6, though they did bring back a feature from Battlefield 5, which was the ability to sprint while crouching. Though not as fast as standing up on your 2 feet, it does give you the added benefit of being able to move a little bit quicker while keeping your head down, which is something I missed from Battlefield 5. And another interesting detail I noticed is that in Battlefield 2042, whenever you're firing your weapon and aiming down the sights, whenever you go to reload, you can continue to aim your weapon while aiming down the sights. And it doesn't matter whether you're shooting an assault rifle, a pistol, or an SMG, Battlefield 2042 allows you to reload while ADSing, while in Battlefield 6, they changed it to where only certain weapons can allow you to reload while aiming down the sight. SMGs and pistols allow you to do this, while assault rifles, for example, make you break out of the sight to reload your weapon, which I did think was an interesting change. And moving on now to a comparison of the blood decals between the two games. And in Battlefield 2042, this was one of the first Battlefield games that allowed you to actually see blood decals when shooting fallen enemies in the environment. And though the blood decals don't shoot out onto the geometry around the character, it does come out of the character itself. Whereas in Battlefield 6, whenever you shoot a fallen enemy, not only do you see a blood decal coming out of the character model, the blood decals actually shoot out onto the environment and into the geometry, which is something we've never really seen in Battlefield before. But I gotta say, one of the coolest new features in Battlefield 6 is when it comes to the medics, because in previous Battlefield games, if you were playing as a medic, you're running around with your defibrillators, mass reviving people, and it's a ton of fun. And though you can still do that in Battlefield 6, they did add a new ability, whereas if you're playing as a medic and you want to revive somebody, or it's just somebody from your personal squad and you're not a medic, you can now grab your downed allies and drag them out of the dangerous situation to then revive them. And it's a ton of fun, and it's one of those things that, like, I can't believe it's taken Battlefield this long to add this, but now that it's in the game, I can't imagine it without it. Which leads us to a comparison of how melee works between 2042 and Battlefield 6. And in 2042, whenever you go to stab with your knife, your character actually puts their gun completely away to then stab with the knife. And it's only when you hold the melee button does your character equip the knife all by itself. And in Battlefield 6, it's mostly the same, though I do think it's kind of cool that your character doesn't completely put their gun away to stab with the knife and only puts their gun away whenever they hold the melee button to equip the knife. But by far my favorite addition when it comes to the melee of these two games is that in Battlefield 6 they brought back first-person executions instead of what we saw in 2042, where it would rip you out of first person into an awkward third-person animation. It never quite looked as good as it does in Call of Duty, and I'm glad it's back to the way it was. And you guys know I gotta compare shooting cars between these two games, and in Battlefield 2042, whenever you shoot a tire of a car in the environment, it's kind of funny because eventually the whole wheel just gets blown off, which kind of cracks me up. And in Battlefield 6, they finally added the feature where if you shoot a tire in a car, it eventually just deflates the tire, and you can actually see the suspension change in the vehicle. This is something we've seen in Call of Duty for years, but now it's finally in Battlefield, which is pretty cool. And whenever you shoot the windows of the car in both 2042 and Battlefield 6, the shattering of the glass, in my opinion, looks great in both games. I like that you can just see the little bits of glass interacting with the geometry of the car, and it looks great across both games. And since we're comparing shooting cars, you know we gotta blow them up as well. And in 2042, whenever you use C4 on a car, the explosion, in my opinion, it looks great. I love the black billowing smoke and how the flames actually start to spill out onto the ground. And in Battlefield 6, honestly, it looks pretty much exactly the same, which is to mean it looks great across both games. And I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And that's pretty much what they did here in Battlefield 6. And another interesting detail I noticed between 2042 and Battlefield 6, that whenever it comes to shooting glass in the environment, in Battlefield 2042, I always thought that the bullet holes in the glass are barely noticeable and they don't look that great, though the shattering of the glass in this game has always looked fantastic. So I thought it was kind of funny that in Battlefield 6, they just decided to cut out the middleman and have the glass shatter on the first shot, and because, you know, that's what the game is good at doing anyway, might as well get to it faster, and that's exactly what Battlefield 6 does. And now with this next comparison, I thought it was pretty interesting because I always like comparing what the C4 does to the ground in Battlefield games. And in 2042, you can see there's a pretty impressive explosion with a lot of particle effects, and it looks great. Though in Battlefield 6's beta, because keep in mind, I know this is the beta, and things could change, I did notice that whenever I used the C4 on the ground, it often wouldn't really do anything at all. I tried this a couple different times, and you wouldn't really see a difference, though sometimes I did notice that it would change, though it took a little bit of chugging and loading for it to load the destruction. I have a feeling that this is what it's supposed to look like instantly, and hopefully this is something that can be patched out before the game releases this October. And another interesting difference I found between 2042 and Battlefield 6 is how your personal character reacts to both concussion grenades and flashbangs, because in 2042, whenever you get hit with one of these grenades, your character actually throws their hand up, and it looks pretty good. And I do like the added animation of your character trying to shield his eyes from the blast, while in Battlefield 6, you don't see the same hand animation, but I would argue that the animation of you getting blinded by the flashbang is more impressive than what we see in 2042. And while we're talking about grenades, I wanted to show a comparison of the smoke grenade effects between 2042 and Battlefield 6. And as you can see here in 2042, the smoke grenade just kind of looks like kind of a big smoke ball, and then it just kind of dissipates. But I gotta say, though it doesn't look leaps and bounds better in Battlefield 6, the actual effect of the smoke filling in the environment does look a bit more impressive in Battlefield 6, as it has a little bit softer edges around the outside of the smoke, and it makes it look a bit more realistic than what we saw in 2042. And with the final comparison in this video, I just wanted to highlight the sound design of the weapons themselves between 2042 and Battlefield 6. I wanted to show a comparison of an M4 style weapon and a pistol just to show you how crunchier the audio is in Battlefield 6 versus what we had in 2042. Well guys, you made it to the end. Thank you for watching my direct comparison of Battlefield 6 versus Battlefield 2042. And I know I mentioned a couple times in the video that, you know, this is Battlefield 6's open beta, so some of these things I'm complaining about in this game could be patched out potentially before the game releases in October. But I mean, even Battlefield 2042, a game that's been out for years and has received countless patches, can still at times be a pretty buggy experience. I mean, I captured a whole plethora of bugs in that game just capturing for this video, so I can't really speak for whether or not, you know, some of these issues in Battlefield 6 will be patched out before it launches on October 10th. But at the end of the day, this open beta really gives us a good idea of how the game's going to feel. And at the end of the day, I'm pretty excited to spend more time in Battlefield 6 creating more content for the game, so be on the lookout for that. But, you know, at the end of the day, I'm excited for Battlefield 6. I want to spend more time in it. I can't wait to see more maps and features and stuff that are going to be in the retail version of the game. But either way, guys, that's all I have for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, be sure to drop a like on it. And if you haven't subscribed yet, you've made it all the way to the end of the video. What are you doing? Subscribe so you don't miss any future content. But guys, that's all I have for this video, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. See ya.